Hey fam, well the draft is over and there are quite a few takeaways. Leave it to Scott to get drunk in Block Island and come out with the highest Yahoo draft grade with an A. Scott's team had the second fewest reach players since the auto draft forced him to take a defense and kicker in the 8th and 9th rounds. But at least for those reaches, he snagged the top defense and arguably one of the best kickers to emerge last year. Reach players are players drafted at least 2 rounds too early, meaning that you could have grabbed someone better and gotten the same player later in the draft. While Yahoo gives Scott an A, who needs backup quarterbacks or backup tight ends nowadays anyway? There is a reason Kittles and Bits was sitting there at the end of the draft. In the round Scott grabbed Ben Roethlisberger, some other studs were flying off the board. Ever hear of Alshon Jeffrey, who finished last year as a wide receiver 2 or higher 43.75% of the time? He may be injured, but guys like Ben are a dime a dozen and off the waiver wire. Did you know that last year over 40 QBs threw together a top 10 performance at least 1 week of the year? There are only 32 teams, so QBs are the most replaceable position. Don't worry, Scott. Yours wasn't the worst QB mistake of the draft. On the bright side, everyone else in this draft messed up letting Sexy Rexy fall to you in the 10th round. In fact, you auto-drafted 4 steals, or players who were drafted 2 rounds later than their average draft position. Let's hope your hands-off approach falls apart over the coming season. Willie, your team had the second highest Yahoo rating with a B, but I wouldn't get too excited. Over the course of this league, your team has gone just above a 50% ratio. Piss and Moan is an appropriate name for the team that embodies Jeff Fisher and the drafted Jared Goff. With 5 reaches and 2 steals in the draft, your spirit GM is Jerry Reese. I know Jimmy Handsome looked good last year, but let's not overreact. He only started a few games, and I would be hard-pressed to put him in the same category as other first-year greats like RG3, Tim Tebow, and Jameis Winston. For all we know, he may just be as big of a loser as Dak Prescott. I still can't believe Sony Michel fell to you in the 14th. He may just be the best pick of this entire draft. If he pans out, you may have the next Dion Lewis for 13th round keeper next year. Also coming out with a B is Michael. Last year, Kareem Hunt's consistency revealed him as an RB1 44% of his games and an RB2 or higher only 62.5%. The Chiefs struggled when Hunt had less than 20 carries, so maybe Reed will wiggle his magical mustache and make your fantasy dreams come true. Yahoo says your biggest steal is LaShawn McCoy. Let's see if he can bruise his way into an RB2 finish. You reached on 3 players, but Nick Chubb certainly has potential, if Carlos Hyde gets hurt. You somehow managed to double down on OBJ's talent with the sneakiest pick of the draft, snagging Anthony Miller before Justin or B. Heath could get to him. With only 1 QB, you are really hoping for a repeat performance from Alex Smith. Since 2009, when he joined the league, Smith has finished as a QB2 until last year where he finished 4th overall. I'm not saying last year was a fluke, but he could also just be a serviceable fantasy backup. Brian's draft was a B-. Now, I'm not trying to brag on his behalf, but T.Y. Hilton in the 5th? Last year, he was a wide receiver 2 with Beef Brisket at the helm, and I heard the Colts are going to have much better luck this year. Even Brian reached on 1 player, but as only the people who join the Google Hangout know, he sniped Justin on the tight end sleeper and snagging Trey Boo Boo in the 7th. Remember that Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, Alvin Kamara, and Kareem Hunt were all monsters in their rookie seasons. While Scott auto-drafted my man Saquon, Brian managed to take on Mr. Rolls-Royce Freeman, carry on my wayward Johnson, and a possible keeper pick in the 12th on Darius Geis. There is a chance all of these rookie RBs will be incredible, but since he already has David Johnson and Melvin Gordon, these potential breakout candidates are just bench warmers for now. Justin's team is a glorious fortress built on sand. Kamara's efficiency was astronomical last year, but we haven't seen him carry the load by himself. And more importantly, Darren Sproles had a similar breakout right before disappearing into fantasy irrelevance. Fournette and Diggs will be incredible fantasy assets if they can stay on the field this year. Remember that year when Eric Ebron was a great tight end? He was top 6 only 6% of his games last year, and joins teammate Jack Doyle, who finished as a top 6 27% of his games last year. Whether baby hands Doyle or butter hands Ebron get the ball, the baby butter hands of the Colts will leave Brian's T.Y. Hilton in the best position for a breakout season. With 4 reaches and no steals, Justin's team still got a B-. So what does that say about the bottom half of our league? Ryan comes in with a C+ despite taking Aaron Rodgers 22 picks earlier than necessary. While this mistake would have hurt most teams, Ryan redeemed his rushing core with borderline stud Christian McCaffrey and 7th-round steal Dion Lewis, who I think is going to play a big role in the Titans' new up-tempo offense. Ryan's bright spot in the dark cave he was drafting in was in the final 4 rounds when he managed to get Alshon Jeffrey, Chris Thompson, and a bargain with the potential keeper Rashad Penny, who has all of the talent in the world and a horrible O-line. Even if this is not his year, Penny has one of the best keeper potentials depending on how the Seahawks shore up their O-line in the next offseason. With that wedding coming up, I would definitely start saving your pennies now. The Juan Carlos Tapia. Don't let this absurd draft grade of C+ get you down, JC. You only reached for 3 players, and I don't think it's fair to call anything a reach after the 11th round. Julio Jones finished as a wide receiver 1 19% of his games last year, and as a wide receiver 2 or better only 31% of his games. He may have finished as the 4th best WR last year, but those points all came in a handful of games. I'm expecting the Falcons to rebound this year in Steve Sarkisian's 2nd year as a play caller. When all the other handsome white guys are suspended or hurt, there's only one receiver Tom Brady trusts, the last white guy on the field. Chris the Hulk Hogan is going to have himself a season, and paired with the upside of Sammy Watkins, you may be able to overcome the volatility with your first 2 wide receivers. The Vikings are a team on the rise, and their RBs will be thunder and lightning. Latavius is going to pillage and plunder all of the touchdowns away from Dalvin Cook. This was a great late-round pickup. As we all know, your waiver wire game is what keeps you in the playoffs every single year. C is for cash money. Well, maybe not so much. Uncle Matt wisely voted against throwing away $20 this season. With 5 reaches and 4 steals, Matt's Marauders jumped the gun on Ronald Jones, who is firmly behind Peyton Barber on the Bucs, and Tom Brady, who would have slid into the 5th round rather than the 5th pick. Maybe the TB12 method will rejuvenate Marshawn Lynch, who I think will be coming back to dominate the turf in Gruden's ground and pound offense of 1999. With the Seahawks' departing defense and a struggling run game, Russell Wilson is slated to pull together a top 3 QB performance this year, and Matt basically got him for free in the 8th round. Unlike the rest of us, Uncle Matt waited until his last pick to take his only defense. With their new head coach Gimli from Lord of the Rings, or rather defensive guru Matt Patricia from the Patriots, this Detroit defense may not need to be streamed at all. C- is technically passing, so you don't need to fire your new GM just yet, Uncle Mark. With 6 reaches and 2 steals, a C- feels appropriate for this start. Roto Alarm suggested taking the Jacksonville defense early, but round 3 seems a tad too early, like 8 rounds too early. Cousins was another reach since he could have fallen to the 8th round after the likes of Russell Wilson. While it's never a good sign when your team is trading for the backup center from the Giants' 3 and 13th offensive line from last year, maybe Dalvin Cook will be the guy we saw for 4 games last season. If Pete Carroll is trustworthy, Chris Carson may be the starter for the Seahawks on week 1. Since Marshawn left, the Seahawks have hyped up Thomas Rawls, Kristen Michael, Eddie Lacy, CJ Precise, and JD Smooches McKissick. Seattle's biggest losses came last year in the form of letting their top talent leave for Maryland. Not only did they lose baby Conrad in the gang, but Alex Collins jumped ship for the Baltimore Ravens, where he finished top 10 last year. At first, I thought the D+ was talking about the positive side of that Duracell battery that I keep seeing advertised all over the place on Yahoo. Joe's team isn't exactly an energizer either. With 3 QBs, you may have missed out on some wide receiver depth. Dak is going to struggle to make anything happen this year behind the beat-up O-line and suffering a 3rd year with a case of the Beasles. That's when your best wide receiver is Cole Beasley. You drafted some good pieces in the first 5 rounds, but the waiver wire will be your friend. The season's not won in the draft, but in the waivers. This year, we have a free agent budget of $200 fantasy dollars. We all start with the same amount, but once you use it, it's gone. If you bid too low, you may not win that stud player who emerged in free agency this week. My advice to everyone, but especially you, Joe, is to try not to waste money on kickers and defenses and conserve for the big guys. Additionally, check the message boards for a free podcast on your weekly commute that'll have you prepared to attack the waivers and avoid the dreaded loser prize. The loser prize will be a hat that you have to wear at every family gathering with 3 or more league participants present. May the odds ever be in your favor, Heafys, and to you, Juan Carlos.